All right, awesome. Okay, welcome to the session today. It is 10 o'clock here in Utah. It's cold, it's gray, it's depressing, it's horrible outside, but I'm really excited to be with you here today, so thank you so much for coming. And I will get to watch the snow fall outside my window as you guys get to participate today. 70 degrees, 84. I'm sorry, but why am I living here? I want to say that it's always nerve-wracking to present to a group of your peers, especially to my Utah Virtual Academy counterparts. And I am so, so glad that they're here supporting me and cheering me on. I have seriously the best and most supportive team I could ever wish for. Every person on this staff is cooperative and helpful and collaborative, and I am so glad to be here today. This is just a brief biography. You can read through it if you can, whatever. I used to be in theater for 5 years. I did it in high school. I did it in college. I taught elementary in brick and mortar. I taught high school at virtual. I have been a mentor teacher for new special education teachers coming in. And right now I'm an instructional facilitator. So I've been in the classroom for many years. The virtual classroom for many years, and now I get a chance to work with teachers, which is fantastic, because I really do have the most amazing team of SPED teachers you will ever find, and I don't say that lightly. Anyone who knows me knows I don't give empty praise. But I love singing, dancing, acting, my whole thing. As a matter of fact, I have a show that's opening tonight, so I'm double nervous today, but the adrenaline is going. What drew you to this session? We're seriously going to take 30 seconds on this. I'm going to give you whiteboard tools. Please type up on my board what drew you to this session. If it was just the first one I saw and I clicked on it, go ahead and type that into onto my chat box or onto my whiteboard. Totally fine. But there was a reason you chose it, and if it was simply that it was the first one of the day, fantastic. I got put into a good slot. First one, and I clicked on it. Thanks, Jessica Tatro. Awesome. All right. One thing you will know about my session is that I really feel like presenters need to acknowledge that teachers learn the same as students. We like to be engaged as well. So I'm going to try to engage you as much as I can, because I do tend to zone out during presentations sometimes. Thank you so much for your engagement. What are the common challenges teachers face in virtual education? Type it up on the board. What are you seeing with engagement? I want to see so many responses. Get it up on the board. You're seeing delays. You can't see their eyes. You know, imagine a brick and mortar teacher having to teach a class in front of a screen. Let's say they had a classroom and there was a screen between them and their students. That's what we do every single day. And we are masters at what we do, and we can always get better. But how do I reach out? I don't know their faces. They're missing in action. How do we get to engage? How do they not log in and walk away? We can't see their eyes, no shows. Yeah, we have so many unique challenges as virtual educators, and hopefully today my goal is to address a few of these. From my experience as a virtual educator, these are 4 of the biggest challenges. They're not coming. Raise your hand if you have seen kids not coming to class. Raise your hand. All right, now I want you to give me a green check if you have kids who are leaving class early. Green check if you've got kids leaving class early. What about students not responding? They come, they stay, but they are not responding. Give me a red X. If your kids are coming, staying, but they're not responding. Yes. And then lack of connection between teacher and student. If you're seeing this, go ahead and give me let's do a frowny face, a confused. This isn't super smile. So obviously I have been in a virtual classroom and I have felt and seen all the same things that you guys are struggling with. And so my goal today is to show you kind of some of the things that I did in my classes that might help you, Might not. Maybe you'll take away one gem from this session, and that will be enough for me. Okay, so quick reference, how do I get my students to come? We're going to talk about attendance policy. How do I get my kids to stay? Behavior management. How do I get my students to respond with routines and procedures? And finally, how do I build and maintain relationships, connect? These are the main areas we're going to focus on today. How do I get my students to come to class? Okay. So one thing I have noticed is that nobody wants to work for free. Do you want to work for free? Do you go to teach and you don't pick up your paycheck one month and you're like, oh, that's totally fine. I didn't need that. No, no, no. Nobody wants to work for free. And that's the same with our students. They will work for points. Or they'll work for something else that they find valuable, especially our high school students will work for points. And so in your attendance policy, we need to be addressing this issue, making sure that the kids feel like it's worth it for them to come. So raise your hand if you have an attendance policy in your class right now, and it's posted, and you stick to it, and the kids understand it, and it's relevant to them, and they know and you don't slack on it. You have very high expectations with your attendance policy. If you do not currently have an attendance policy, or maybe you have an attendance policy, but maybe it's not effective. So there's the question you need to ask yourself. For me, I found that if attendance wasn't 30% of their grade, they weren't going to come. And so I had to make it really, really costly to miss. So 30% of their grade was attendance. But the reason I can justify that is because they are getting such direct and targeted instruction with me that it makes a huge difference in their ability to perform on their assessments, to meet their standards and goals, because I'm a special ed teacher. And so I felt like that instruction was huge to their grade. I did want them to be able to watch recordings, but I wanted it to be weighted much more heavily to attend live sessions, because everyone knows when you watch a recording, you do tend to zone out, and if you're not engaged in a live session, you might miss stuff. Full points for staying to the end. They could only earn extra credit in live classes. So if they say, Mrs. Raj, I really want to earn some extra credit, I would say, come to the live class. That's where I give all my extra credit. So just things like that make it both costly to miss and lucrative to come. So I want you to spend a second right now thinking about a way that you could make it costly to miss and very lucrative to come. All right, use those points as an incentive. Announce it everywhere. Make sure that you're constantly referencing your attendance policy in your Class Connect, in your homepage, syllabus, emails, notes, welcome calls, auto dialers, orientations. Just make sure that you have that attendance policy posted and that you are sticking to it. All right, let's talk about how do I get my students to stay to the end. So we know how to get them there. Write this down. Make it costly to miss, lucrative to come. Okay, so however you want to figure that out, do that. Then how do I get my students to stay? Okay, so you got them there. You made it so they're like, oh, if I don't go, I'm going to have to do this extra quiz, or if I don't go, I'm not going to get my attendance points. You want to create a behavior management plan. Now, a lot of teachers in the virtual setting don't have one because they're like, well, there's not really going to be any behaviors in my class because we're not meeting together. Raise your hand if you currently have a behavior management plan in place in your classroom. You've got to have behavior management plans that address all the things that happen in a virtual setting. So you don't need a rule about poking your neighbor with a pencil. But you would need a rule about how to keep the whiteboard neat and appropriate, or responding together, or 100% participation. So the first thing I would say when you're creating your behavior management plan is you need to create Class Connect expectations. If you review Class Connect expectations at the beginning of every single lesson, raise your hand. This was something that I did every single time I taught a class. I always reviewed my behavior expectations. I said, okay, I want you to raise your hand. if you have a question or a comment. I want you to keep the whiteboard neat and appropriate. I want you to participate during the entire class for full points. If you step away from your computer, mark yourself away. If you need to stay to the end. So these were my rules that I would go through for the first minute of class every single time we met. And then throughout the lesson, I would be praising to these rules when I saw students following them. If you currently do not have classroom rules, come up with some today. Write this down. You need to have a clear attendance policy, and you need to have class rules. And it's fun because when they go through, you can have them write the rules up. So you can type them right up on the picture. You can give them a 1-minute timer, and then the first person who gets them all up can get an extra credit point, something like that. Then you need to have positive consequences and negative consequences. So these are things that they get for coming to class, also for responding or following the classroom rules. So if you have a positive and negative consequence, a hierarchy set up in your behavior management plan, raise your hand right now. Awesome. If you do not yet have your positive and negative for appropriate responding to the behavior management, the rules and expectations, do that today. The kids they don't want to work for free. So if you're going to tell them you want them to circle or highlight or write or raise their hand, what are you going to give them? They don't want to work for free, but they will work for points. Okay. Then you want to make sure you're establishing some kind of backup reinforcer. So what are the points earning? You can have them earn extra credit in the course. You could have them earning points toward a classroom party day, or some other incentive that you create that fits within the guidelines of your school. So make sure that if you're giving points, the points have a purpose. Are the points in the course? Do they go towards the test? Do they go towards the final? Do they go towards the class party? What do you want your points to go toward? Decide that now. If you are currently using a point system of some kind in your classes, raise your hand. It's really, really fun to do points with your students, and I'll show you some other examples of how you can do that. Then, in order to reinforce these expectations, you want to make sure that you're praising specifically. So we don't want to just say, good job, good job, good job, good job, good job. You want to do behavior-specific praise and academic-specific praise, like, you raised your hand, that's one of my rules, nice job following that rule, or I noticed you all responded together at the same time, or I liked how you kept the whiteboard neat. With academic praise, you could say, you got the answer correct, you really know how to write a topic sentence, or you memorized your sevens. But there's lots of different ways to do this. This is just a very basic overview. Some teachers are doing stars. However you want to delineate, the kids are earning something, and it doesn't have to be like they're earning a Skittle or a piece of candy. Earning the point and having that paired with specific praise can be very rewarding to students, and they will work for that. The other thing I have done is created an Are You There breakout room, and I put one at the bottom of this section. And you can, what I do to make sure I have all my students together is I say, all right, I want everyone to put your pointer on the board. Once your pointer's on the board, please raise your hand. So let's go ahead and practice that. Everyone put your pointer on the board. Once your pointer's on the board, please raise your hand. And what I'm doing is I'm looking to see who are the stragglers down at the bottom. So obviously, once you raise your hand, you're moving up to the top of the participant list, and everyone who isn't responding is going to be down at the bottom. So it's very easy for you to start seeing who is responding, who's with you, and who has checked out. At that point, once all the pointers are on the board and everybody who's with you has raised their hand, you can move the non-responders into the Are You There breakout room. You can just grab their name and drag them in. Nice job. And then once their pointer's on the board, you can start having them work with that pointer, whether it's following too long while you read or whatever. And so what you're doing is you're moving those students into the Are You There breakout room if they are not with you, and then they can move themselves back up. Another thing that I have seen that I really, really like is a teacher at our school, and I just barely saw her do it. Her name is Tamara Height, and what she will do, because she has a very large group of students, she will actually move the entire class down to the Are You There breakout room as an engagement check, and then anyone who's still with her will move back up to the main room and continue the lesson. So, wake up room, Are You There? I love that. I love the idea of moving everyone down, that way nobody feels picked on, and then if you're still there, just move yourself back up and the lesson begins. It can take 30 seconds. So it's called an engagement check. So raise your hand right now if you are currently doing an engagement check type of activity in your classes. Fantastic. If you are not yet doing an engagement check, consider adding this component to your classroom. All right, the next thing I do is I love to give extra credit in class, and I like to give it in the form of group points. Because so much of what I want the students to be doing is group work. I can give a lot of individual points, and I do have a spreadsheet up on my other monitor where I do keep individual extra credit points. But I really, when I'm trying to get my kids responding with me, I really, really like to give group points. And the way I do it is I just do it on a sticky note. So I write group points at the top, and then I just flash it up to the screen. So I would give group points for something like everyone raising their hand and putting their pointer on the board. That would be a group point. Okay, so I see the question about giving that many points. The points can go towards something else. So the points don't have to go to extra credit. That's just how I structured it. Your points could go toward earning a classroom party or a game day, or however you want to make the points work for your class. It doesn't have to go straight to extra credit. Obviously, as a special ed teacher, my groups are going to be small. With bigger classes, you're going to have more different challenges with that, which is why I really like Tamara's idea of the engagement check, where you pull everyone down and everyone moves themselves back up. If you're doing those engagement checks and the stragglers are staying behind in the Are You There breakout room, technically or theoretically, you should be able to have everybody with you because they are moving themselves back up if they are still engaged. So then, only give it for 100% accuracy. The reason being is if you start giving group points for group responding, if you start giving it for 80% or 50%, that's what you're always going to get. You're always going to get 80% or 50%. And so if, let's say, your engagement has been down to like 20, if 80% is what you're going for, fantastic. Choose what your goal is for your level, for the number of kids that you have and what you feel like is appropriate. But again, if you're doing those engagement checks, you should have your students with you. One thing I want to say is to make sure you're very engaging. I only stand to teach because I feel like it gives me a lot more energy. Praise what you want to see more of. Use your student names. Call them out. They like to hear their names. It makes them feel more connected to you. Always expect 100% if you can, but if you are coming from like a 20% engagement, try for 50, try for 60, try to up that engagement level as much as you can. How do I get my students to respond? So now this is where we start to see connections between the things I've already taught you and how all of these things start to tie together to help, everything kind of helps each other. So making sure that you state expectations at the beginning of every class and praising to those points, to those expectations, will help enforce your procedures. I really like to do the point, raise, and follow. We did this briefly, where everyone puts their pointer on the board, and then once your pointer's on the board, you raise your hand, and then we follow along as we read. So I can tell who's reading with me because their pointer is bobbing up on top of the words, just like a Mickey Mouse sing-along video. And they get really used to the procedure where they stay on top of the word so they don't cover it up. And every single time there is something for us to read, this is what we're doing in my class. Because, first of all, my kids have reading problems, and I want to see that they're tracking and they're staying with me. The second reason is because a lot of kids can zone out when they're reading a passage. And this helps you see how many people you have engaged with you. If you currently have a procedure for reading and making sure everyone is with you in your class, go ahead and give me a green check. Okay, this is the next thing that I love to do in my classes. So right after the rules, I really like to do a response check. So I like to give my kids the opportunity to use every single tool they have available to them. I like them to raise their hand, use emoticons, and they get to use every single tool right before class begins. It gets kids engaged. They get to get their wiggles out, essentially. And we just practice using every single tool. And the cool thing about this is that I've been able to catch certain students that are like, well, I don't know how to raise my hand, or I don't know how to highlight. And then I can teach them how to use that tool in that moment. And then when I need it later on in the lesson, they've already been instructed on it. So this is something that can take 2 minutes of your time, but it gets the kids excited and it gets the kids engaged. If you are currently doing some kind of a response check to make sure that all the students know how to use all the tools or get a chance to use all the tools, go ahead and give me a green check right now. And this slide should be in the Dropbox if you would like to, yeah, you can take a screenshot of it, or it should be in the slides in the Dropbox folder. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. All right, so we talked about creating an attendance policy where it's costly to miss and lucrative to come. Your points can go toward whatever you want. If you don't want it to go to extra credit, make it toward earning something as a class. Make sure you have a behavior management plan that includes at least 5 clearly stated positive rules, and make sure you're praising to those rules and expectations with negative and positive consequences for following the rules. Then create routines and procedures, such as the Are You There breakout room, the point, raise, and follow procedure, and the response slide. All right, so the last thing I wanted to address is connection. So it is difficult to connect virtually, but here's what I have found. I use my webcam the entire time I teach. I love using my webcam. It took me a while to get used to it. It stressed me out. I'd be like, oh, it's so hard to watch myself teach, but you get used to it after a while. If you currently use your webcam every time you teach, please give me a green check. And I'm not just talking, turn it on in the beginning, say hi, and then leave. I'm talking about making sure that your space is secure, that door is always locked, my space is totally secure, and I use my webcam the entire time. And if it lags, you can turn it off, but I love to use my webcam. Make sure your teaching space is secure. Dress professionally, even if it's just on the top. But your students can tell how you feel about your job based on how you come to work. And so sometimes I'll get on the webcam and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is never going to work. So I've got red lipstick right here in my desk, and I just put that on and put my glasses on, and instantly I look like I got ready. Be expressive, be engaging. You can wear costumes and hats if you're on the webcam. Rachel Bellamy at our school is really cute and fun. She does that a lot. If you are having lag problems, just try to turn it on several times during the lesson. And again, I do use the webcam with my group point system, so I actually don't just use it for connection, but also as one of my routines and procedures. Make sure that your praise is specific. So this is where all the things start to tie together. I just want to make sure that you are understanding how to praise specifically, and that you're changing up your verbiage, that you're just not saying good job every time. That will be hollow to your kids. Really notice what they're doing and really attend to it. Fantastic work today. I'm so impressed with you. look what you accomplished today. These types of genuine praises can be felt by our students, and they will love it. It makes them feel so good about themselves, and especially if you really, really want to connect with your students, praise them by name. So notice one of your students, maybe a student who's struggling, notice one of your students and praise them by name. That has been amazing has worked amazing for me. Okay, give me a green check if you currently are using OneNote in your practice. Who is using OneNote? Okay, OneNote is awesome, okay? If you used to keep all your stuff in like multiple folders and Word documents, move to OneNote. Everyone should have it. I think it comes on your computer. And it's just basically like an online notebook. It is amazing. You can take screenshots. You can send messages from Outlook to OneNote. Go to OneNote. There's a whole series on OneNote for teachers that you can watch, and it's just fantastic. I use OneNote all the time. I have my OneNote pulled up. Using it right now to take notes. I have my OneNote pulled up during my classes, and I have a tab for every student. As you can see here, every single one of my students has a tab, and we will talk. The first 10 minutes, we'll build relationships. We'll talk about what's the weather like where you are in St. George, or what's going on where you are, and they'll tell me, I have a soccer game, and I will go to their tab, and I will literally type it in right there. The reason being is because I want to be able to ask them the next class how their soccer game went. And so keep notes during the classes. These are simple, easy things you can do. You don't have to go above and beyond. You just open up your OneNote, go into that student file, and have like a little page that says personal info. Click on it and type in what you heard. We celebrate birthdays. We do good news minutes. We do bad news minutes. So a lot of times my kids want to share bad news. And so we'll do a virtual group hug or something to connect. And I always like to say, you know, we're having a bad day today, but this is a safe place, and you can know that when you're here, you're valued, you are seen, and you matter. So yeah, that could be great for homeroom kids too. Create a strong classroom culture. I kind of want you to think about your classroom as having its very own personality, okay? So like when you go to Mrs. Rush's class or Mrs. Atkinson's class, that there is a set of things that you're always going to see and you're always going to do. You're going to have class cheers, class mottos, a class vision, get to know you slides, procedures and consistency, inside jokes. Create a classroom culture. If you feel like you have a very strong classroom culture where you have icons and pictures that are the same, when the kids come to class, they know exactly what they're going to get. They have a repeat experience. Just give me a green check. Creating classroom culture is huge to getting your kids to want to come. When they come to class, they want a repeat experience. You go to McDonald's because you know exactly what you're going to get when you get there, not because it's perfect food. You go to Chuck E. Cheese because you know exactly what you're going to get when you go there. It's called a repeat experience, and people love to have a repeat experience. They want to know what to expect when they go. So work on creating that repeat experience and show that genuine care and concern. The last thing I want to point out to you is called the sandwich technique for redirecting behaviors. I've heard teachers say that I asked you a simple request and you did not follow my request. I heard this in a virtual class. I asked a simple request of you. And so, yes, calling out a behavior that isn't great is fine, but if you do it in the sandwich technique, you can build the relationship while redirecting behavior. So, I enjoy having you in class. Right now, you are drawing weird faces on my whiteboard. I need you to keep the whiteboard clean and appropriate. Thanks for being a great student. Sandwich it. Say something great. Right now you're doing this. You need to be doing this. And then sandwich it again with another phrase. And that will help you connect and bond, create those bonds with your students, even when you have to redirect behavior. Summarize what they've done with their behavior at academics and have an exit procedure and exit ticket. All right, can you answer these questions now? We have 30 seconds. So type up on the board the things you remember from the 4 learning targets today. How do I get my students to come? How do I get them to stay? How do I get them to respond? And how do I build and maintain positive relationships? Again, if you took one thing away from today and everything else was totally unapplicable, it's still worth it for this whole presentation. Thank you so much for coming. Please feel free to email me or send me a message if you have more questions. Thank you to my colleagues who joined today, and fantastic work today. You guys are awesome.
Let's give Wendy a huge round of applause. That was an amazing and very engaging presentation. Alrighty, we are going to move to the attendance, and there are the conference materials and program guides here for you, and we're going to get ready for our next session. So Wendy, if you can stick around and maybe answer a few questions in chat, wonderful. If not, we'll get set for our next presentation.
I can absolutely stick around and answer questions. No problem whatsoever. There were some really great comments coming into the chat box that I really wanted to address, and my teacher heart was just aching that I couldn't address every single question that I saw coming up. Sorry, I gave you a microphone. If it's easier for you to hop on and ask questions, that's totally fine too. I saw, how do I keep track of points? I have a spreadsheet open on my other screen. So I always have 2 screens going. I have the one that I'm teaching on, and then over here on this screen, I have my extra credit point spreadsheet and my OneNote, and I just alternate between the 2 of them. And if a student gets a point, I just take it right during the class, because I don't want to do any more work after class than I have to. I want it to get all done during class. I don't want to have to do a lot of outside stuff. So I take the points right in the class, and at the end of class, it's already done. Does that help answer your question? I'm all about keeping it simple and not having to do too much more. I really want all this to be able to be done during your class. Because I feel like if you feel like you have extra time and you don't feel overburdened, then you're going to be a happier teacher, which means you're going to enjoy your teaching better, which means your kids are going to enjoy you more. It's just all around good if you're not being overworked. So I say simplify as much as you can and get as much done during the class as you possibly can. Okay, you know what, I should have, let's see if I can find some OneNote stuff. OneNote will revolutionize your teaching. I promise if that's the only thing you take away from today, you will always remember this presentation and you will say, I'm so glad I started to use OneNote, because it seriously is amazing. It is a notebook, and you don't have to keep paper anything anymore. You can keep screenshots of all your students' work, their writing samples, whatever they're working on, and you can put it right into their very own file folder. And then going back and reporting progress is so easy because you have screenshots from Class Connect right in your OneNote. If you Google, go to YouTube, look at OneNote tutorials, I'm sure that you will see lots and lots of videos about how to use OneNote. I taught myself how to use it doing that. So if I can do it, for sure you can do it.